romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. Author Denise Williams returns to the show to discuss her new rom-com, Do You Take This Man? And Denise plays Quickies Q&A. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hi, Denise. Welcome back to Reader Seeks Romance.
Hi, so good to be here.
Congratulations on the release of Do You Take This Man?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I would like to kick off the conversation with one of the most descriptive, passionate blurbs for this book, Do You Take This Man, that I have ever read. You're already laughing, so you must know this is Allie Hazelwood's blurb, best-selling romance author Allie Hazelwood. She wrote, and I quote, "If, hypothetically, Denise Williams decided to establish an academy, let's call it the University of DW, and offered courses on how to write pent-up sexual tension, steamy banter, and enemies to lovers, I would burst into the classroom and yell, 'Take my money!' The writing is unmatched, the chemistry is on fire, and Do You Take This Man has one of the steamiest, most addictive, most satisfyingly hard-earned happily ever afters I've read in ages." So
I squeed and laughed out loud when I got that email with that quote.
I think that is the ultimate mother of all quotes, of all. Yeah.
It really is wonderful. And Allie's just about the nicest person that has ever personed, and has talked me into writing some weird books together in the future at some unnamed point. But yeah, she's lovely. I was so appreciative of that quote and all of my quotes, but that one was a lot of fun.
Have you written any blurbs for her?
You know, I haven't. They haven't asked me to for her first two, but I don't know what's coming up.
Well, I'm wondering, like, the pressure is on. If you're asked to do a blurb for Allie, you're going to have to bring it.
I give good blurb, so I'm comfortable with my my blurbing skills. So for context, I dedicated this book to the ones who think they're hard to love. And that is the emotional crux for both of these love-averse characters. And in true rom-com fashion, they are polar opposites. So RJ was in The Fastest Way to Fall. She was Britta's best friend. And she is tough as nails. She suffers no fools. She is professionally inclined as a divorce attorney, and is kind of navigating the world in that lane. She does not believe in the existence of romantic love, with perhaps the exception of it, you know, falling on her two best friends. And she has no intention of meeting the love of her life. And it just so happens, because for romance reasons, she also officiates weddings on the side. She kind of accidentally falls into that, which is something that I accidentally fell into as well. So on the opposite of RJ is Lear. Lear used to plan events for the NFL. He's a charming guy. He's always been able to get along with everybody, be the nice guy, and for a variety of reasons, his life falls apart in a big way in California, and he finds himself homeless, jobless, and driving home to live in his cousin's basement and help her plan weddings. And so this he has a dude bro facade up as a wedding planner. She is RJ in all her glory, and they literally run into each other their very first meeting. And the first thing he ever says to her is "You should smile more." And I swear, I promise he redeems himself, but that is their starting point. So it was so much fun to write this enemies to lovers, enemies with benefits story, because they just butt heads. They both like to bicker and argue. And eventually, you know, through the course of the story, as they're growing and figuring things out and being a little dumb about love, they also kind of figure out that they're with somebody who appreciates all these things about them, that doesn't tolerate, you know, that she wants to argue or that he is competitive, but actually genuinely loves those things. And that's a little bit of the arc of their story. So you get to go to a lot of weddings. That was a lot of fun to come up with. And meet some, you know, some different characters along the way, but that's the gist of the story. And so again, it was really fun to write about all these weddings with two people who don't believe in love.
Yes, I definitely was enjoying that. I was like, oh, how fun is that? Denise actually has to also plan weddings, fictional weddings, to write this book. So you also become this wedding planner, you know, so I enjoyed that. I definitely feel as if you have had close encounters with dude bros because I feel like you wrote Lear, the dude bro, very accurately that I completely could see and hear him. I was like, oh, Denise knows what she's talking about. There's a story there, probably.
Yeah, at least at the start, he definitely like has the dude bro tendencies, even though you see into the gooey part of his heart, you know, when we're in his point of view. But yeah, I've known a dude bro or two.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, before I get further into the novel, you've already teased me with how you accidentally became a wedding officiant. Do tell.
Yeah, so I got ordained online a long time ago because two friends were thinking they'd get married and they were joking that I could do it.
Okay.
And my uncle was ordained through the back of a Mad magazine back in the 70s. I think it was Mad magazine, through the Universal Life Church, and they still existed. They had an internet, an internet website. I don't know how old I am. They had a website, and so it's a joke. I got on there and we did it, and I didn't end up officiating their wedding. I didn't think much of it. And then in 2007, it was on a Monday morning or a Wednesday morning. My best friend at the time called me and said, hey, what are you doing in 2 days? Can you come marry me and my girlfriend before I'm deployed to Iraq? And so I was like, yeah, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, but sure. And I think at that wedding, like we wrote the ceremony like in the car. I was kind of chauffeuring them and then helping like get clothes organized and everything like that. And so that was the first wedding I think I ever did by myself because my uncle had helped me with one before for some friends. But yeah, that was totally on the fly. And now I've done maybe 10 or 12 since then. So like when I play Two Truths and a Lie, I always win because I can say I married my brother, I married my best friend, I married my cousin. And people are like, well, I hope it's the brother. And I'm like, no, I married my brother, but you know, it's just somebody else. So yeah, so that is kind of just a little family thing now. And then my brother got ordained so he could perform my wedding as well. So like my mom has just kind of built in family pictures for all of our weddings just from the altar.
Do you think that this will become like your sideline, the romance writer who officiates weddings? Is that going to be your thing? Is this going to be a regular occurrence?
You know, I don't know. I haven't offered those services out because I usually just do it for friends and family. But you know, who knows? Let's see. Like I have a PhD in education, but I might set that aside to do this because it's a lot of fun. And I always joke that when you're the officiant and you're just a friend of the family, you're the one person nobody can groomzilla, bridezilla, personzilla on because they need to keep you happy.
So do you feel that given your shared experience of at least officiating, do you feel like RJ might possess the most of you than your other protagonists?
You know, actually, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not quite as tough as RJ, although I would love to be. But the you know, something I think back to when I was single and having my own moments of I don't believe in love, it's never going to happen for me. And you know, at the same time officiating weddings was that moment of and RJ says this in the book at some point, you know, just for a few minutes I could pretend that I believed in love and I could pretend that I was confident that it was going to work out for these two people, or, you know, for those few minutes I was confident, even if afterwards my defenses are back up, my walls are back up. But in this moment, I can be in that space. And I definitely feel that, even though I've always been a bit more of a romantic at heart. But helping people write their ceremonies is so much fun. And the wordsmith in me loves that. And the collaborator and the facilitator and you know, I love public speaking, so that part's fun, but actually helping them write the ceremony and figure out, you know, what's going to go where. And that, you know, that's a really exciting and fun thing to be able to do.
Just going back real quickly to what you said about RJ, she felt good or just a little bit of hope, just pretending that she bought into all of that and that all that really exists. And that was really the moment where I was immediately endeared to her because it was it was like a hopeful sadness, and it's like, oh, I want her to see that, you know, she can have that. And so I thought that was a really a nuanced aspect of her character that really immediately for me clicked.
Thank you. And because I really do love that about the character. And I've posted a couple things about in romance and writing, quote, like prickly heroines or tough heroines, and there's so much like gendered and misogyny and patriarchal stuff embedded in that. but I really love getting to see somebody who is tough and stays tough, but that is able to show kind of that soft side to themselves. And you get to sort of, you know, see those pieces, but we know we're not one dimensional. And
Right.
I really love reading characters like that and seeing people like that. And so it was really fun to write that character.
I am interested in knowing where you were and what were you doing when the idea for RJ and Lear's love story popped into your brain.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was in New York for the Romance Writers of America. It was the one time I ever attended in 2019.
Oh, wow.
And it was actually the only time I've met my agent and my editor in person. And I remember it was my birthday. And so we were going out to lunch to talk about, at that time, How to Fail at Flirting. We were trying to come up with a title for it. So we were going to lunch there. And as we were walking in, I was just chatting with my agent about things I do, or maybe I had a wedding coming up or something. But I mentioned that I officiated weddings. And offhand, she's like, "Oh, that'd be a good setup for a romance novel." And then that just started spinning in my head. And I was like, wait a minute. And so I actually went back to the hotel and wrote the first, I think what ended up being the first chapter, like that very beginning part. And I didn't know who RJ would be in my universe yet. She wasn't in The Fastest Way to Fall yet. And I didn't exactly know who Lear would be, but I loved that idea of something high heat and at weddings and, you know, with this kind of tough character who performed the weddings, because it is kind of a fun angle on romance.
I'm going to preface this by saying this isn't bad. After perusing your Goodreads reviews for Do You Take This Man, it's not bad.
I haven't looked.
The prevalent comments that came up was about the steam in Do You Take This Man? And one reviewer said, quote, "So much steam, like my Kindle screen kept fogging up kind of steam." So first of all, when you hear that, do you think job well done?
Oh, no, I'm very proud. And I have a moment of pause because my mom has read the book already. But then I ignore that and come back to it. So this was my pandemic book baby. So I wrote this book. I wrote that first chapter back then, but then I really wrote the bulk of the book sitting on my couch while working from home with my 5-year-old 24/7, Paw Patrol in the background. Like that's the setting. And so I was going out of my mind, as we all probably were. And I wrote all the sex scenes in that book first. And then I went back and wrote the rest of the book. So I want to say I think there's like 9 or 10 physical intimacy scenes and probably like 6 or 7 pretty explicit like sex scenes. And I love writing those. Those are some of my favorite scenes to write because, I mean, they're fun to write because it's sex, right? But also, I think you can show so much like communication and so many dynamics and nuance that the characters aren't ready to say to each other, but that, you know, you can show in a touch or in a caress, or even there's a scene where they're both like furious at each other and they're having angry sex in a back room of a wedding. But even then you see these moments of care and consent and like trust in each other. And I think you can show those little things in a sex scene that the characters aren't ready to say to each other. So that makes me like very happy because this is definitely a steamier book. And The Fastest Way to Fall was my last book. And I love that book, but it was a slow burn.
Yes.
And the thing about a slow burn is every time you edit it, you have to wait for them to do it. And so I don't know if I'll ever write another one of those because it was...
You said that you wrote the sex scenes first.
I did.
Was this a situation where your characters were having sex in your mind? You're like, I got to write this down?
I think it was more just like I needed an escape and I wanted to write what I wanted to write. And those were just, again, like it started as those were just fun scenes to write. And for all my books, there's sex scenes that don't make it in the book. And for that one, there's a really, really steamy one that was never going to make it in the book that I'll probably release at some point as a threesome between them and an usher. And but like, again, those were just fun to write. And in that time, everything was just so chaotic and stressful. I think I just kind of knew the emotional beats that they'd have. And so those were the different scenes that I wrote and then edited and changed and tweaked and things like that. And same thing, there are a couple of weddings that I originally had in the book, not even the sex piece, but just the wedding and what it was going to be and how the characters were going to move through it that didn't make it in the book. So for me, those were kind of the fun parts. And I was like, well, I guess I also need a plot and some conflict and, you know, they can't just bang and go to weddings. That's not really a story. So, build the rest of it out.
That is awesome. You're gonna have to release that scene now that we all know it exists. That there's a
It's
threesome.
it's of the spicier things that I've ever written, and it's completely really out of the world of the book, other than it's those two characters.
I was gonna say, did you drop it because it was kind of off brand? You felt for what you write to have a threesome?
It is off brand, I'd say, for my rom-coms. I have a lot of stuff that's not published that would fit in that, but
Oh, sexy. So like, oh, okay. Oh,
it
nice.
doesn't really fit the story, or really it fits the characters and like who they are, but
And
it
now I
doesn't
can't
really fit
stop
the
thinking
story.
of
It
it.
was just fun to write.
So going back to the dedication you mentioned earlier, you dedicated the novel to those who believe they are too hard to love, as do RJ and Lear. How did you approach that challenge of writing a love between two protagonists who believe themselves to be so difficult to love? Or maybe you didn't find it a difficult challenge.
I actually I didn't because I think I've been in that place in my life before, and I know a lot of people have. And so for me, that felt kind of very natural given what their wounds are,
Mhm.
kind of what caused their walls to go up.
Right.
That both of these people, it's not only that they didn't necessarily, they say they don't believe in love, but I think both of them really do.
Mhm.
They just don't believe that it's for them.
Right.
And Lear knows that, I think, a little sooner than RJ does, and admits that to himself a little sooner than RJ does.
Right.
But that felt very natural to me. And I think some people may be frustrated with, characters with walls up, that they're like a little hot and cold and they're figuring it
Mhm.
out. And I get that. But I also think that's so human. I think that is so realistic. And I love the push and pull, and I kind of like characters who make it a little harder to get to the happily ever after,
Oh, of
who
course.
have those, what I think are pretty realistic hesitations to taking, a baby step forward and then a baby step back and then a big leap forward. And then you end up in a
Yeah.
closet with somebody and you're naked. And then, baby step back and forward until they kind of nudge that to the end.
Yeah.
And so, and I do think so many people have, bad luck with relationships or friendships, or even like with family. I don't think it's just in romance,
Right.
but decide that that isn't other people, that isn't society, that is them, that it's a problem with them,
Yeah.
versus,
Yeah.
finding that person or those people who validate us, who make us feel like we are home. Finding those places that feel like home
Right.
can be so uplifting to so many people. And so I wrote that at the end of the book after I was finished, but I was like, that's really the journey that these folks were on.
Your 2022 has been crazy.
Yeah.
Because you wrote a series of novellas, are they all set in the airport? Do they all take place?
Yeah, well, they're all set kind of in and around the airport. The
Okay.
middle one, it's two people who are traveling together, but
Yeah.
they're always in and around the airport.
Right. They're being published together, correct?
They are. And
Yeah.
yeah, so we just got to reveal the cover the other day. So the novellas were a lot of fun to write. And I think originally we pitched the first one, and they were looking for something. I think the initial call was for, they wanted a pet. They wanted to be kind of seasonal, and they wanted small town. And I was like, that's not what I write. They're all in cities or some college towns, but like, I've never really lived in a small town. And so I started thinking about communities, and I love airports. I have always loved airports. And I've always been obsessed with this idea when I was single that I was going to meet like the love of my life in an airport.
Oh.
Didn't happen. And then also, I always think there's an ex-boyfriend I'm going to run into. I never have. We're Facebook friends. Like, we're not even on like bad terms or anything. It's just, I always think I'm going to run into him in an airport. And so I don't know, just the idea of all these stories coalescing in one place before people move out into the world has always felt like such a romantic idea to me.
Yeah.
And so with the novellas, the first one is an airport dog groomer. I don't think that's a thing, but I decided for romance reasons it should be. Meets her Diet Coke break. The traveler who she always just watches go from gate to gate, and it turns out he's a romance author. And so, that was fun to write. And then in the second, it's two academic rivals who accidentally make out in an airport and then have to travel together for 5 days. And that is kind of enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine type of story. And then the third one is two best friends who have 5 days to solve a mystery. So that was like a busy year, but those were tropey. They were light. Obviously they're shorter because they're novellas, but that was a lot of fun to write, even though it made for kind of a busy year.
Do you think you would do it again anytime soon, to do another trio of novellas?
I'd love to do another trio, probably not in concert with a novel. I'm also for the last several months have taken over my unit at my day job at the university. And so, no, I don't know that I would do that again anytime soon, but writing novellas was a blast. Like, that was a lot really fast, but I have so many other like airport ideas, but just other short ideas that I don't know. It's fun to write something kind of different and in a different universe. And that more condensed length, I think, lets you get to, you know, it's just, I love my subplots. I love them so much. I love all my side characters, but it kind of lets you forgo that and really dive into this kind of single story, which is a different way of storytelling that's fun.
We first met on Reader Seeks Romance in January of 2021 to discuss at the time your debut, How to Fail at Flirting. We had an awesome chat about that. Since then, how have you changed as a writer and an author?
I think I'm less precious about my writing, especially my first drafts. I've drafted a lot of books and sent a lot of books off to my editor since then. And I still love my stories, but I think I trust the editing process a little more. As a writer, I think that's probably the biggest change. Because when I wrote How to Fail at Flirting, that was my first published novel, but it was my first novel ever. I didn't know what I was doing, like, at all. And now I still feel like that sometimes, but when I sit down, I actually, I kind of do know, and I know the process a little bit and kind of can trust the editing process and trust my characters a little bit more. But I think I definitely do have more of that trust. So I'm more comfortable with it not being perfect, with it not being there yet, as I, turn it in to a beta reader, to my agent, or to my editor.
What are you currently reading?
I am rereading, I'm re-listening to Sarah Cates, has a series of novellas, The Salacious Players Club, or maybe they're not novellas, but the third one, I can't remember the title of it, but is a menage, throuple, polyamory kind of story. I'm listening to that, and I'm reading the fourth one, which is called Mercy, which is a femdom story, kind of a personal growth story.
Oh, I like it. What's the last book you read?
I read, it's an advanced reader copy, but it is Rochelle Billows' Ruby Spencer's Whiskey Year. And it takes place kind of an escapist story to the Scottish Highlands. So I was reading an early copy of that, and I just finished that actually the other day. And it's really good. It's very escapist and warm and like found family. And so that one will be coming out, I think, in January.
Which book is on your to-be-read pile?
There's a lot of them. Kennedy Ryan's next one, Never Let Go, is probably top of my list. I have Fallon Ballard's next one, Just My Type, I think. And then I'm like stifling the urge to just look over my shoulder and see what's in that stack right there. But those are a few that are coming up. So this week, the book came out, and I am taking it off from work. I have a pretty demanding day job, and I'm not going to be there this week. And so lots of time to read and do book promo, but also just sit on my couch and read in my sweatpants. And I'm so excited for that.
Who is your top auto-buy romance author?
Ooh. Kind of depends on my mood, but I do think Kennedy Ryan can do no wrong.
Okay.
And I stan her. So yeah, probably Kennedy Ryan. And she's also just a phenomenal human too. But I think she's such a skilled writer, and every time I read it, I'm just like, I should just give up. I'll never be this good. But her writing is so just fluid, and her story is so nuanced, and the sex so hot, that she's definitely an auto buy for me. I've always loved Christina Lauren books. I think I have all of theirs. I need to get their new one yet. Are two kind of big name authors who for me are auto buys, and there is somebody who isn't published yet, but they're like an auto read. Regina Black, her debut will come out, I think, next January, February, The Art of Scandal. I was her mentor for Pitch Wars, and she is going to blow everybody away. And I've already just committed myself to owning everything she ever writes, because her debut is just that stunning and gorgeous. So good, so good. So I've already committed her to my auto buy list, even though I can't buy her book quite yet.
Which romance trope do you dislike reading?
Secret Baby. I don't even have to think about that one. It is Secret Baby.
You know, a lot of people, I've asked that question before, and that is a popular answer. I have yet to read Secret Baby, but I want to just to have the experience. How many have you read? Just like one, and you were like, that's it?
Pretty much. And I don't even remember the name of it.
Okay.
I can see where it fits sometimes. I don't love pregnancy in romance novels. For me, that was just not an experience that was real romantic or enjoyable. And again, that's different strokes for different folks. And, you know, I've written those kind of in pieces in mine, but I don't typically love that in a book. But I do teach, I teach a class on romance novels and social justice at the university I work at. And this will be our 4th year teaching it. And I co-teach it with my dear friend, Emily, and we, in addition to talking about social justice and romance novels and the industry, we introduce them to romance. And so every week we talk about a trope. But we always save that one till later because we don't want to unduly influence our students because both of us are so viscerally against it.
What is your romance writing superpower?
Dad jokes, is that? I think every hero I've ever written tells bad jokes, and every heroine I've ever written really appreciates them.
Yes.
But I do think I have a knack for balancing like silly, nerdy humor, even with folks who are going through some stuff that's heavier, and finding the balance of that between the characters in a way that feels natural.
Which is more difficult for you to write? The opening line of a novel or the very last line?
The opening line, actually. I think in almost all of my books, the opening line that I wrote at the very start is the one that ended up in the book. And not that they've all been like big prophetic lines, but I love kind of that opening scene, that opening moment. And I am pretty sure those first lines have almost all stayed the same all the way through editing.
What are you currently working on?
What am I currently working on? Right now, I am waiting on edits for my 4th novel. It'll be out next fall. And if you've read The Fastest Way to Fall, and it's mentioned in Do You Take This Man, it's Pearl and Cord's story. So it's a second chance romance, and it takes place in like a Girls Who Code type organization, a nonprofit. I love those characters so much. She, again, is a kind of another kind of guarded woman, and he is just soft and gooey and just wants to be in love. He's just like the sappiest character I've ever written, and that was fun. So I am working on that, and then I'm also working on editing a short story I have that'll be in an anthology that's out in the spring called Even If the Sky Is Falling. And that's through Harlequin, and it's I think it was pitched as Love Actually meets your favorite 90s disaster movie where they kiss at the end. And so all of these couples think the world is ending, they're sheltering in place, the world is not ending, and mine happens to open in the middle of a sex scene, which is very on brand. And so pretty high heat, and there's a good mix of stories. But Taj McCoy is editing that one. It'll be out, I think, in May or June.
Very exciting. Well, Denise, it has been a pleasure catching up with you. You are a delight.
As are you. Thank you so much for having me.
Why, thank you. Thank you for taking time to join me here on Reader Seeks Romance.